X-Men 2000 has a lot of plot holes. Plot holes so big you'd wonder how anyone ever thought that this movie was the exception to the long line of shitty X-Men movies. But it also has a lot of good shit in it, so we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and everything in between. The movie opens up with Magneto's origin story, which was quite jarring because I distinctively remember the Wolverine cage fight sequence being the first scene of the movie and the Magneto origin story being introduced in first class. Wolverine isn't even the next scene because after Magnus gets his shit kicked in for destroying their gate, we introduce Rogue as she sucks the living daylight out of her boyfriend, and not in the fun way. Then we cut to Jean Grey at some sort of Senate hearing as she tries to make her case against mutant registration. So I guess Fox just decided to skip right to the Sokovia Accords arc in the first movie. Okay, the senator she's intellectually battling against is so dumb because she says that mutants who come out of the closet get death threats. Then he literally says, what are they hiding and why are they so afraid of identifying themselves? Dude, do I need to get you a copy of the script? She literally just answered your question. He then goes on to talk about a girl who can walk through walls and immediately accuses her of one day maybe potentially trying to rob a bank. Like, dude, you just proved Jean Grey's point. Why would mutants reveal themselves if you're just going to keep accusing them of crimes they haven't even thought to commit? What the fuck? I finally get my Wolverine cage match sequence. He kicks some ass, the losers do a big mutant racism on him and he shows them why he's the best at what he does. Later on, Rogue asks him if it hurts when the claws come out, which also surprised me because I thought that scene was from the Wolverine. It's been so long since I watched the X-Men movies that I'm literally experiencing the Mandela effect in real time. Anyway, he says they hurt every time they come out, which makes sense because they're literally tearing through the skin to be revealed. But he has a regenerative healing factor, so the skin instantly heals the moment the claws retract. It's not until we get to Logan that we see pus and scar tissue surrounding the area as his body begins to degenerate from decades of adamantium poisoning, leading to his healing factor no longer being as effective. It's a poignant detail about Wolverine that I really like as it reveals that this whole X-Men mutant superhero thing isn't always all fun and games because on top of his mental burdens, he also suffers great physical pain whenever he uses his powers. It's akin to Deadpool's healing factor curing his cancer faster than it can spread and kill him, but ultimately not being able to completely remove the cancer growth because his mutation has registered it as being a core part of his physiology, so he essentially still has cancer. It's also similar to how Cyclops can never really open his eyes without his ruby quartz glasses because they are a portal to the punch dimension. Don't ask. They proceed to make fun of their superhero names because this is the early 2000s and superhero movies haven't started making literal billions upon billions of dollars at the global box office yet. So the movie still feels the need to point out how silly its premise and source material are. Sabertooth attacks, they get saved by a light-skinned Storm and down bad Cyclops. Back at the mansion, Jean Grey jams a needle into Wolverine's arm because we need to initiate their love story. He regains consciousness, runs out of the room so we can have our obligatory sexy superhero shirtless scene, and we see the Y2K version of the ideal male body type in all its 18% body fat glory. If only he knew what the future had in store for him. Professor X gives Logan a touch of schizophrenia as a means of leading him to his office. He meets the rest of the gang, they do a big fish out of water audience POV exposition dump on Logan, and the movie uses him to do more lampshading on how silly the premise of his narrative is. Apparently, our boy Logan has no memory of his past, so he agrees to stay and let the X-Men figure out why Magneto wants him in exchange for the Professor eventually maybe helping him get some of his memories back. The movie then takes the opportunity to lay the groundwork for X-Men Origins. The threesome, I mean love triangle between Jean, Cyclops and Wolverine gets kicked into full effect as Logan relentlessly flirts with Jean. She initially resists but eventually just becomes more increasingly intrigued by both his charm and the mystery surrounding his past, and Scott just plays CIA mind games with Logan to give off the appearance of being unbothered by the fact that his girl so clearly wants to ride Logan's adamantium shaft. It's a good thing the new actor for Cyclops is bisexual. Maybe now we can finally get some goddamn mainstream LGBTQ representation in our X-Men movies. God bless America. We haven't really been talking about Magneto, and that's because bro is on his own side of the story doing his own thing. He was present at the Senate hearing, heard all the mutant racism the senator was peddling, so he had Mystique kidnap him, then proceeds to use a big cum machine to turn the senator into a goo man. To what end? Who the fuck knows? It turns out that Magneto actually wanted Rogue, not Wolverine, so Mystique impersonates the boy she likes and convinces her to run away. Which makes sense because that way they won't have to deal with fighting the X-Men as they try to kidnap Rogue from the mansion. But they then allow her to get on a train instead of just apprehending her immediately she leaves the mansion. Anyway, their dumb mistake gives us a great scene on the train where Logan, in an attempt to convince Rogue to come back, actually opens up to her about the perils of being a mutant, and this big stone cold tough guy who literally tried to abandon her in the cold when they first met now promises to take care of her. It really shows how much of an impact Xavier has had on him and the potential he has to help the rest of mutant kind. Meanwhile, Cyclops is over there trying to covertly look for Rogue while wearing the visor for his bright red concussive beam. beams. Magneto finally remembers that he has to kidnap Rogue so Storm and Cyclops get attacked. While she's getting choked, Cyclops' visor gets stolen and he blasts a hole in the roof. Then Storm finally uses her powers because I guess she couldn't do anything until she could physically see Earth's atmosphere? Okay, that's some really dumb shit, bro. Like, so, what? All they have to do is lock you in a room with no windows and you're cooked? Dark-skinned Storm wouldn't have stood for that bullshit, I'll tell you that right now. And what exactly was Sabretooth's plan? He literally just stood there doing nothing for 40 seconds until she blasted him with lightning. Why the fuck are there bolts and nuts on Logan's claws? Does he unscrew them and take them to the shop to get them cleaned and sharpened on the weekends? What the fuck? The cops gather to stop Magneto. Magneto pulls an Uno reverse card on the cops. His good friend Professor X pulls an Uno reverse card on him. Magneto calls his bluff and Charles capitulates. Mystique then picks them up with a chopper, which doesn't make any sense because Storm and Cyclops are literally still in the building. They should have stopped Magneto. What the fuck were they still doing in there? Making out? Can I watch? This nigga Charles is so performative, bro. Senator Ghoulman makes his way to the X-Mansion and asks for their help with his current Ghoulman situation. Then Charles does this whole song and dance of sitting behind him and hovering his hands over his temples all cool like. Meanwhile, he was mind controlling Sabretooth and Toad from 50 feet away. Just read his mind, bro. You ain't gotta do all this aura farming, man. We see the fit, bro. Holy shit. Lock in! I love how Charles always gives himself full mobility whenever he enters your mindscape. He does it every single time, bro. It's fucking hilarious. We're about halfway into the story and the movie finally realizes that Storm doesn't even have a character yet. So the script tells her to go check on Senator Ghoulman. We find out that she's scared of humans and the good senator turns into the literal embodiment of scaring the hoes. Charles tries to use Cerebro to locate Rogue, but he gets infected with a neurotoxin that Mystique snuck into the dashboard after she gaslit Rogue into running away, which doesn't really make any sense because this big ass mansion with all these X-Men and nobody saw a teenage boy impersonating Charles' retina scan to gain restricted access to Cerebro. All this high-end technology and there's not a single alarm or sensor to alert the team when an unauthorized child enters their underground secret lair and cons his way into the most restricted room in the mansion? No? Okay, I guess they have to find some way to nerve their most powerful members so we can have some tension in the final battle. Let's get back to Magneto for a bit because his grand plan doesn't really make any sense. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but Rogue has the ability to steal the powers of any mutant she touches and the life force of any human being who comes in contact with her skin. That's how she put her boyfriend in a coma at the start of the movie and why Mystique was able to convince her to run away. You see, Logan was making noises in his sleep because he was remembering the plot of X-Men Origins, so she goes into his room to comfort him. He ends up stabbing her in the chest because of his PTSD and debilitating commitment issues. She almost dies, so she steals his healing factor to heal herself and almost kills him in the process. Mystique basically preyed on her guilt and made her believe that Professor was gonna whoop her ass unless she ran away. Anyway, the big com machine is a device that emits com radiation to trigger a big com mutation in regular human beings. He wants to turn the whole world into mutants because if everybody's a mutant, nobody is. So I guess he's stealing Syndrome's plan from the Incredibles. Great. I know he's only trying to mutate the world leaders and international dignitaries on the island for the meeting, but my Syndrome Incredibles joke doesn't work unless I say he's trying to mutate the entire world, so shut up. He uses his ability to control metal and manipulate magnetic fields to activate the machine, which takes so much out of him that almost kills him. So his plan is to transfer his powers to Rogue and connect her to the machine so she can be the one to activate it. But that doesn't really make any sense because the machine doesn't activate itself by sucking on Magneto's power or life force. Magneto has to intentionally choose to use his powers to activate the machine before it does anything. So just touching Rogue and making her touch the machine won't do shit. She has to choose to use his powers to activate it before anything happens. So she can just choose to not do that. And even if we assume that she decides to help the bad guys for some reason, she would first need to be taught how to use Magneto's powers in general, then how to use his powers in the specific way that activates the machine. None of that is taken into consideration. In the movie, they just hook her up to the machine, Magneto touches her, then it starts working as if it has a mind of its own and it's now draining Magneto's power from her body in order to power itself, when that's literally not how it works at all. But really, the plot hole in Magneto's plan stretches back way further than that. Remember when I told you that Magneto was at the Senate hearing? Yeah, Charles was also there. They had a conversation during which Charles read his mind and saw his plan to kidnap Rogue, which is why Storm and Cyclops were there to save them. The problem with this scene is Magneto has a helmet that is specially designed to protect him from Charles' telepathic abilities, which is why at the train station, Charles couldn't just control Magneto to make him stop. He had to control his goons instead, which, now that I think about it, adds another plot hole to the list because if Charles just made Sabretooth take off his helmet, he could control Magneto, make him release the cops, save Rogue and put Magneto in prison. At least the prison that the movie believes can hold Magneto. Roll credits. End of movie. So that's Professor X plot hole number 2. Let's get back to Magneto's second plot hole. He knew Jean Grey was going to be at the hearing, which means Charles would not be far behind. And even if Jean Grey wasn't the mutant ambassador, it should be obvious to Magneto that Charles Xavier will be present at the Senate hearing that is meant to decide the future of mutant kind. If he knows Charles was going to be within his vicinity, and he has a plan that Charles would not like, bro, why not just wear your helmets to the hearing? He even acknowledges Charles reading his mind during their conversation and does nothing to stop it. Like, here bro, the script says that the plot won't happen unless you read my mind, so I guess I'm gonna act like a complete dumbass for the next 5 minutes. If Magneto had acted with a shred of intelligence at the start of this movie, he would have kidnapped Rogue and carried out his plan without anybody even knowing there was a plan to begin with. Introducing your antagonist by character assassinating him is kinda crazy, but okay. With their press X to win button sufficiently taken care of, the gang heads out to apprehend Magneto and we get the infamous line.
Actually go outside in these things. What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Considering that those yellow spandex pulled in $1.3 billion at the global box office just 2 years ago and they're about to pull in another billion this Christmas, yeah, I'd reckon I want to keep them on standby.
Am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
Oh god no! They get to the Statue of Liberty, Mystique impersonates Wolverine, separates him from the gang and gets her claws cut off. Which, by the way, how exactly does that work? If her claws are an extension of her real body instead of being a supplementary external attachment like with Logan, then what happens when she changes back to her real body? Is she also going to be missing like 3 fingers, or does she also have a healing factor that regenerates her lost body mass? Food for thought. Anyway, Toad comes in and separates Cyclops from the crew, then proceeds to beat up Jean and Storm. I repeat, a telepath, a telekinetic, and a bitch who can control the weather were defeated by a human frog. Okay, it's funny, I made the joke earlier about Storm not being able to use her powers if she's indoors, and that's literally what happens. I also don't understand how an Omega level mutant is struggling to remove dried frog mucus from her face. Is this fucking Looney Tunes? Cyclops finally decides to rejoin the battle, so he blasts the door open and helps Jean. Their justification for him not being there while Toad was coming on his girl's face is that he was knocked out, which is pure bullshit because that's the exact same excuse they tried to use at the train station when Magneto was having his way with New York's finest. You're a superhuman mutant superhero with tactical training and years of experience in the field. It should not be this easy to make you unconscious, my nigga. You're the next step in human evolution, yet to keep taking intermittent naps on the battlefield? The fuck? How are you able to survive this without a scratch, but a frogman coughs on you once and it's lights out? I also don't understand why Jean doesn't just control their minds and make them stop fighting. Don't give me that bullshit about she hasn't fully mastered her telepathic abilities yet because she was able to unlock the hidden memories in Logan's brain that even Charles couldn't see, and she used Cerebro to find Magneto, which according to her is supposed to be impossible unless you have great amounts of control over your powers. Bitch, at the very least you can control their minds and make them all fall asleep. Don't give me that bullshit. The amount of shitty wire work on both Toad and Mystique throughout the entire fight is actually making me sick. Anyway, Storm finally remembers she's a superhero and immediately kills Toad with lightning. Not sure why she didn't do that earlier, but okay. Logan impales Mystique, the gang regroups, then Magneto apprehends them with metal bars. Sabretooth takes off Cyclops' visor but refuses to destroy it. Toad also did the same bullshit at the train station. I guess the director told both of them that Scott really needs his visor to kick their ass. Either that or they both read the script and decided to help the good guys for a change. Logan frees himself. Jean has telepathy, so I don't know why she hasn't freed herself and the rest of her team, but okay, he gets into a fight with Sabretooth on the roof and we get the infamous claw scene. Now, this scene doesn't make any sense because there are no hooks at the ends of Logan's claws, so there's nothing anchoring him to the statue. In reality, he would just stretch out his claws, make 3 slices into the statue and fall into the water. This whole swinging around bullshit is just the movie breaking the laws of physics to keep Logan in the scene. Even if he had hooks at the ends of his claws, I don't think he would have had enough momentum to make it all the way around. He'd probably just dangle under the spike and would have to lift himself back up. It's a good thing they set the scene at night because that digi-double would have looked so much worse in daylight. I'm talking shirtless Henry Cavill in the Chronosphere level bad. It's too bad the darkness couldn't hide that shitty wire work though. Love how they used the spike to hide the transition from the digi-double to Love how they use the spike to hide the transition from the digi-double to Hugh Jackman. It's also funny how Hugh Jackman keeps trying to crouch in order to hide the fact that he has a 6'2" unit of a man supposed to be playing a 5'3" homunculus. Kinda lucky how he didn't jam his claws into either Jean's or Scott's head right here. I don't understand why we had to have Storm use the wind to carelessly and precariously send Logan up to meet Rogue when Jean could have just used her telepathy to do it so easily. I don't understand why Jean didn't let Scott take the shot on Magneto when he was trying to stop Logan from destroying the machine. I guess she just really wanted to wait for Rogue to get the classic white streaking ahead before Cyclops could save the day. I also don't understand how Rogue is able to still activate the machine once Magneto stops touching her, because last I checked, she doesn't retain the powers after physical contact has been broken. If not, she would have just used Wolverine's claws to free herself once Magneto started touching her. Anyway, Logan gives Rogue his healing factor to bring her back to life, so that's cool. Now she successfully sucked the life out of 2 senior citizens in one night. Old man Charles wakes up just in time to watch Jean emotionally cheat on her boyfriend. We get some unintentional sexual tension between Logan and teenage Rogue before he fucks off to go watch X-Men Origins. Then we see Magneto in a plastic prison which should not be able to hold him because he has the ability to fly by pushing against Earth's natural magnetic field, and as an Omega level mutant, he can generate his own personal magnetic forces and repulsive energy fields. We've seen him do this multiple times in the movie already, so I don't know what they're trying to pull with this plastic prison bullshit. In summary, if Charles had put security systems in place to prevent children from entering his lair or alert him when someone tries to access Cerebro, he wouldn't have been excluded from the final battle and they would have won immediately. If Charles had made Sabretooth take off Magneto's helmet at the train station, the movie would have ended. If the superhuman superheroes stopped taking naps on the battlefield and just decided to actually use their powers, they would always win immediately. If Magneto wore his helmet to the Senate hearing, the movie wouldn't have happened. The whole bullshit with Rogue and the Com Machine is too retarded to even recap. And they had the worst Stan Lee cameo in the history of Stan Lee cameos because he's not centered on screen and he doesn't even get a single line of dialogue. They made him a background character with no lines, bro. What the fuck? That man is a legend that deserves all the reverence and respect in the world, and you turned him into a fucking blink and you miss a 2-second background Easter egg? Nah, bro. Fuck this movie. Subscribe to my Patreon and give me all your money. Alright, bye.